Hello, everybody. Welcome to Unified Purpose. This is the podcast where we share inspiring tales of compassion, resilience, and community spirit. I'm your host, Daniela, and I'm Penji's Partnership Coordinator. I'm joined here today with a very special guest, Sarah DeLucas from Joyfull Readers. Hi, Sarah. How are you doing?
I'm good, Daniela. Thanks for having me on.
It's so great to have you today on the show. Was it DeLucas or DeLucas? Actually, I'm second guessing myself now.
It's DeLucas, but either or is fine.
Oh, okay, cool. So Sarah DeLucas, but it's great to have you on this episode today to kind of get us warmed up to everything. And for all of the viewers and listeners who are not familiar with Joyful Readers and what you do, can you tell us a little bit about that, about yourself, how you ended up here, just everything that we need to know about you and Joyful Readers, your favorite color, just the whole shebang.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Joyful Readers is a local nonprofit that's based here in Philadelphia. I believe Penji is also based in Philadelphia as well. So, yes, yeah, the best city in the world. Can't wait to go party on the parade route tomorrow. But yeah, Joyful Readers is a local nonprofit here in Philadelphia. We're about 3 years old, so we're fairly young. And our mission essentially is to ensure that students throughout Philadelphia are able to read on grade level. And how we accomplish that is by we have tutors, and they're actually AmeriCorps members. We deploy AmeriCorps members that are tutors that work full time in Philadelphia public schools Monday through Friday, and provide intensive reading tutoring to K-3 students, specifically the K-3 students that need it the most. So this year, Joyful Readers has a cohort of 48 tutors, which is great. We keep growing year over year. And we are partnered with 18 Philadelphia public schools. We work with both school district schools and charter schools. And we are serving K-3 students each and every day, and we expect that by the end of the year, we will have made an impact on approximately 1,000 students this school year. So, we do, like I said, keep growing. In our first year, our first service year, we tutored approximately 500 students. Last year, we tutored over 800 students, and this year we're anticipating 1,000. So we're really excited by our growth, and we're really pleased with how the program is progressing here.
Awesome. To kind of I did research on Joyful Readers, obviously, and we did wanna feature you guys on, but I think one of my first questions is, what sort of inspired the creation of Joyful Readers? What kind of deficiencies were you guys noticing in Philadelphia where you were like, "Yeah, like, kids are not reading," what happened? I wanna hear the story of how Joyful Readers got a start and what made it, a thing, I guess. I don't know what else to say.
Absolutely. Well, I do want to first credit our executive director who is not with us today. His name is Dave Weinstein. He's the founder and executive director of Joyful Readers, and this is his organization that he created. Dave has been in education for approximately 20 years, and he started out as an AmeriCorps member for another AmeriCorps program called City Year. And he's worked as in schools for City Year, and then eventually achieved a staff role and then an executive level role at City Year. And City Year, what they do is they provide um, AmeriCorps members into schools to sort of help teachers in the classroom. It's a very general sort of space. And Dave was really focused more on children's literacy and reading. And he started to notice firsthand that a lot of students, by the time they got to where there were City Year members working with students in middle school and high school, that's a lot of students were having trouble reading. And I'm not just talking about like reading a history textbook that is, kind of complex and has very high level vocabulary, just sort of reading basic text. And that's very concerning because students if they can't read properly by the time they're in the 4th grade, they really become disconnected from school over time. They have a hard time keeping up with classwork. A lot of times, what we say is that students spend the first part of their education learning to read, and then the second part of their education reading to learn. And so, reading skills are absolutely critical in order to continue on through high school and beyond. And so, when kids don't have the ability to read, um, they will drop out of school. They won't go on to post-secondary school. They don't get great jobs and when they are adults. And so this is such a critical skill, and it's something that is really, really important that all of our students here in Philadelphia and across the nation are able to read. I will say that literacy in this country, we are struggling. And this isn't a problem that is unique to Philadelphia. But, most current state assessments put Philadelphia students only about 35%, as of 2024, 35% of 3rd graders are able to read on grade level. And that is an astounding statistic. The problem being is that, well, that's 35% across the board. Unfortunately, Black and Latinx students have an even harder time. Their rates are closer to 20 to 22%, as opposed to 50% for their white peers. So um, there is an equity issue at hand here, and Joyful Readers is here to address that. We want to make sure that everybody, no matter your circumstance in life, no matter where you're from, no matter who you are, that you are able to master this power of reading. Because without it, your chances of having a success down the road are greatly diminished.
Cool. I think that that's really interesting. And I actually wanted to ask you because I think reading deficiencies can, I do agree with you that they do affect your learning process throughout your whole life if you don't sort of hone them in, like you said. Um, but do you guys have you guys found that there's a lot of kids with reading deficiencies that have, sort of other problems like dyslexia or ADHD or something, and I'm imagining that with, like, Latinx and, um, just minorities in general, that it's gonna be even harder to deal with because you're talking about people who probably don't have the budget to sort of train those type of skills. Like, I know that if you have like, if you're a dyslexic kid, you need a different kind of training in order to learn how to read and write. It's not that you can't do it. How do you guys approach that situation? Which because I'm imagining that you run into it a lot, but it's my guess. Feel free to correct me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think there are a lot of students out there that struggle to read, and whether they're dyslexic or not, or have other disabilities. Um, Second, when students don't have English as their primary language is also a struggle, creates a struggle to read. And so, what this tutoring that we do provides is actually just such very individualized intervention for these students. So, um, hmm, each tutor has a caseload of approximately 20 students, and they see those same students in pairs every single day. They work with those students in half-hour increments, and they provide for them the individual attention that they need. A lot of times, like you said, students are coming at this from all different walks of life, right? All different kinds of circumstances. And so, and it's really hard for our teachers to kind of provide that individualized support to every student that needs it. And so that's where tutoring really comes in. Our program is based on high dosage tutoring that has been found to be a very effective intervention for students, not just in reading, but also in math. And high dosage tutoring means that that tutoring is taking place every day, and it's taking place in schools, and it's taking place during the school day. So we're not an online program. We're not an after school program. This is a program that's happening in schools. Um, and that's why one of the reasons why it is so effective. The other point I want to bring up is that a lot of people when they realize that their child is struggling to read, a lot of people will throw money at that problem by hiring their own private tutor for that student for their child. But not every family has those resources, especially here in Philadelphia, as we are the poorest big city. I'm sure you've heard that many times over in the United States. A lot of our families can't afford individualized tutoring for their student when their student is struggling. And so Joyful Readers is here to sort of to provide that for students that need it.
Sorry, my mic was muted for a second there. But, yeah, I think that that's, definitely really important, and I do understand what you mean with, like, Philadelphia being sort of behind a lot of other cities in a lot of ways. Um I know that you guys, like you mentioned earlier, you're partnering with schools. It's not an after school program. It's not like a direct sort of individualized tutoring type of thing. How, with the amount of public schools that are existing, how do you guys actually choose which schools to partner with? What's that process like, with like the recruiting, or, how do you identify where you might be able to give more of a positive impact on what kind of schools versus where, it might not be a good idea?
Sure. We actually spent the majority of the second half of the year, the calendar year, recruiting schools. So we recruit the schools, but we talk with school principals and tell them about the program. And that's kind of how we get schools signed up. And we do, like I said, work with both Philadelphia school district of Philadelphia schools, and then we also work with charter schools. Um, and so we have a mix of those schools. And a lot of our schools that we work with are schools that have been working with us since year one. So many of our schools are renewing this program year after year after year. And then we're sort of expanding our work. For instance, the Mastery's charter network has many charter schools around Philadelphia. And we started working with them 2 years ago. We were working with 2 of their schools, and now I believe we are in 7 or 8 Mastery schools. So Mastery continues to add us to their program at a variety of their schools. And we do anticipate that partnership continuing to grow. And so a lot of what we're doing is we're meeting with school administrators, we're meeting with principals, we're talking about this program. And principals really like what they're hearing. Um, we had a we had an external research provider go through our student data from year one of our program, and they actually found that our program is making great strides in reading. And so they found actually that our students that are in our program um, are growing more in their reading skills than they would without more growing more in their reading skills than they would in a typical school year. And we actually were able to move the needle up 8 percentage points of getting those students closer to reading on grade level. And so, these principals in these schools are looking at that data and they're saying, "Hey, this actually works. This is actually a really great program." Um, the other thing I want to point out is that while we are incredibly focused um, increasing that reading data and getting kids closer to that reading level. We're also providing emotional support to these students. So, like I said, these tutors are meeting with these students individually and working with them each and every day. And students build relationships with those tutors. And a lot of times, what we're seeing is not only an increase in reading skills, an increase in confidence, an increase in well-being and feeling great about reading, really enjoying reading. And so, that is kind of really hard to measure by data, just data alone. It's really just more observational. But I think that relationship component is just equally as important as sort of the academic side.
You actually answered one of my questions because I wanted to ask you when it came to actual work with the students, how you guys were working around making kids feel excited about reading. So you kind of just like started to answer that, but feel free to sort of elaborate. I'm going to ask you anyways again. I feel like, we're living in a time where not only are we seeing, I guess, deficiencies in like like teaching and stuff like that, but it's also a time where I think people have in general, not just children, but just like humans as humans, we're less inclined to read. With like short form video being just all the rage, just the existence of iPads and TV shows and like, the iPad kid term and all of that and I feel like just reading in children is a lot less incentivized, and children are just less likely to want to read when they can just watch a YouTube video. Um, and I'm imagining that these challenges of like short attention spans, not wanting to sort of put effort into reading a book, um, or being excited about reading is probably a huge roadblock when it comes to working with children like this to, like, because I do feel like it's an important part, right, of, like, making them engaged, is that they need to be interested in it so that they can get better. You kinda started to answer it, but I do wanna hear more about that because I think it's really interesting how you're able to get kids to actually be excited about reading with the world that we're sort of living in, and I also think, like, a kid that's also feels like reading is difficult for them is so much more likely to be discouraged from reading because they feel like it's not even something that they're good at, right?
Yeah, and, I do wanna point out that a lot of that is sort of anecdotal. I think I think it's not I think once children master the skills to be able to read, they will engage with books, and so, I think a lot of that really does kinda come down to their confidence. Every year, we have, what's called our Young Reader of the Year awards, and it takes place at the end of the school year in the spring. And what that event does is it celebrates and recognizes the achievements of four of the students from the cohort from the year who have made incredible progress in their reading. And how we narrow that down to four is we ask each of our tutors to submit a nomination for one of their students where they can sort of talk about the growth and progress of that student. And I read every single nomination that was submitted last year. We had about 35 submitted last year, and I read every single one. And I can tell you that the through line of every single one of those nominations was that that student gained the confidence that they needed to be able to be successful at reading. Um, because if you can't read, it is frustrating. It is a chore. It is uncomfortable. You don't feel great about it. It's not something you want to do. A lot of our tutors, when they start tutoring their students, talk about how these students don't pay attention. They're fidgeting. They want to get up. They're acting out. They're crying. They don't like it. They don't want to do it but I think that all comes down to the fact that they just aren't great readers and they feel like, "Oh, this is another program where I'm just not gonna be successful at it, and I'm not gonna be good at it, and I don't wanna do it." But then every single time, you know, what we're seeing are students that once they start to get these skills down and they actually realize and recognize that they're able to read, they're doing it, and they start to really enjoy it and they get the confidence that really gets them engaged in reading. And so I think when you are seeing people that aren't engaging in books or maybe aren't reading, whether they're a child or a grown up, you have to kind of maybe step back and think, hey, did that person get the appropriate training and instruction that they needed to become successful and confident readers so that they can continue to engage in reading, both not just for professional things or getting through life, but also as a leisure activity, as something that takes you out of your current state and puts you in a wonderful story. So I think that's kind of the through line there.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think, like, enjoying reading is probably one of the most important things to I think reading is also one of the best ways to learn about culture, I don't know. I feel that's a great way to sort of grow, and become more not more intelligent, maybe more just prepared for life. Um, but I also wanted to ask you, Sarah, because I think, you're working with children, and I think there's probably so much involvement with parents, even though I guess you're partnering directly with schools. I can imagine that when you are talking to parents, like parents seeing their kids being a part of this program is a huge part of it. How does that sort of affect the way that you interact with children, or like the way that Joyful Readers interacts with children? Because I feel like every parent is sort of a different world, and it has a different concern, a different approach to how they manage their kids. Do you handle parents who don't think that reading is important? Do you handle parents who are, like, who think that it's too important, or, what's the situation there?
Yeah, I mean, we partner with schools, and schools really do the best to protect the privacy of their students. And so we don't really have that direct access to parents that you're kind of talking about. Um, and so, we are working with students in the school during the school day. Parents know that their student is enrolled in this program, but we really don't have direct access to parents. Parents are coming to the school if they have any concerns or comments or feedback about how their child is doing. And, so far, we do survey our schools, at the end of every year. And the school feedback has been very positive for the past 3 years. They either agree or strongly agree that the program is working. And so that to me signals that the parents, if the schools are satisfied, they're the ones that are getting that kind of feedback from the parents, then the parents must also be satisfied. We do have several community events where we invite the parents of our students to attend. Our largest one is our MLK Day of Service, where we work with one of our partner schools, and we put on a whole host of service projects. We paint murals, we organize classrooms, we assemble literacy kits. And so that's sort of the opportunity for parents to come on out and get to know Joyful Readers and be involved in sort of be involved in that event. Um, and so that's been pretty successful. And the other thing is, I just want to point out is that just talking about take home literacy kits, we are doing more of that work this year. We're creating these take home literacy kits that kids can take home and then use in with their parents to continue practicing reading. And it's something that they can use on weekends, or especially in the summer when there is no school. So, that's something that we're really working on providing so that parents have that tool at home for them to kind of work with reading with their students.
That's really cool. I think, like, having sort of the literacy kit is probably gonna be really helpful to sort of take reading outside of just the school grounds and into just the daily life,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, and it's like a fun and engaging sort of game you do with your kids. So,
It's also bonding, so that's, like, another plus, I guess.
mhm.
But, I actually wanted to ask you too about how, like, you have your mission, you're working on it. How do you involve, I guess, or how has technology been involved in this whole thing? I think, like, just in general with the rise of AI and just technology in general, it really has changed a lot of different things, and I think the way that we interact with reading is very new. Um, how have you guys sort of adapted to all of these changes, and how do you envision them, like, affecting or changing things for you in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we use technology. Our tutors use technology to sort of track their progress with their students. It's a program. It's called Pearl, and it's a tutoring software that they sort of track everything, their lessons, what they're working on with each of their students. It tracks their students' progress. But as far as the actual tutoring work goes, it's very, very analog. We use a curriculum called Wilson's Foundations, and it is a kit. And it's a reading and writing kit, and it is very much like there's workbooks
Hello?
They have letter tile, they use a board, so it's very they're
Hello?
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yeah, there's 2 of you right now, and one of you's frozen. Um,
How do I get out?
I'm gonna remove the other one, don't worry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Our yeah, I don't know what happened, but, you froze a little bit, and I wasn't sure if you could see it, and I was just kinda there like, hello?"
I apologize. My internet has been acting up lately, so, I don't know why that's happening.
No, no worries. It happens to me all the time. I have really crap internet here too. But if you want, we can pick up where I think the last thing I heard from you was about I'm trying to think the kids. I think we were kind of talking about that.
Yeah, so just getting back to the technology piece. Yeah, I think, the tutors use a software system called Pearl to track their progress and track student progress and, make notes about how students are doing. But most of the actual tutoring work is very analog. We use a curriculum called Wilson's Foundations, and that is just a big kit, and it's got workbooks, and it's got letter tiles, and it's got boards, and those are the tools that tutors are actually using in their lessons. Um, but as far as other technology needs, I mean, I've been using, you guys invited Joyful Readers as a nonprofit to use Penji. And we found that to be very helpful in, you know, for a lot of our graphic design needs. I think I mentioned earlier that our big event of the year was our Young Reader of the Year Awards. And through our subscription to Penji, we were able to produce some really fantastic materials from, like, our signage, our, sponsorship brochures, everything like that. So, it was great.
That's awesome. Yes, everybody listening, subscribe to Penji. Um, but I think, like, that's a great note to end this on. It's been so great to have you on the podcast today, Sarah, but before we finish the episode, if anything that we spoke about today resonated with our audience, if somebody would want to donate, help out, volunteer, whatever it is that, you would like to plug, if there's anything, the floor is yours, and to tell them where to find you and what to do.
Yeah, absolutely. We our web address is joyfulreaders.org. If you'd like to support us, there's a big donate button in the right hand corner. We will also be starting to publicize our Young Reader of the Year awards. They're happening on Thursday, May 1st. And if you just head to our website very shortly, there'll be a link up there where you can register to attend. It's free for all community members. It's their free tickets. We don't charge for our tickets. We're really just we really want to continue to grow our base of supporters. I think when I mentioned early on in the program, we're a fairly young nonprofit, and so anything we can do to kind of bring people out to our events, all of our events are free, and it's a great way to learn about Joyful Readers and get involved with our work. And we're also on social media on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. So I highly suggest you start following us along. And that doesn't cost anything. It's a pretty free thing to do, and then you'll stay in the loop on all the exciting things that we're doing here for children in Philadelphia.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'm really adding the links to this all of this in the description of the video so that people can just easily click on them. Um, we're very happy to support Philadelphia nonprofits as a Philadelphia or not organization, company ourselves. So very happy to have you today on the show, Sarah, and everybody go help them out.
Thank you so much, Danielle. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today.
Thank you so much. I had a lot of fun. Guys, I will see you on the next episode.